My name is Brian Dozer right now, currently, and hopefully for the next 10 years. I am the superintendent of Coastline Regional Occupational Program. I joined at the beginning of the year. So if you're familiar with Coastline ROP, great. If not, we provide career technical education classes for 5 school districts. So Irvine, Huntington Beach, Saddleback Valley, Tustin, and Newport Mesa Unified School District. So we work with 5 of those. But prior to that, I was the president of Vitalink. So I worked with Ari for 2 years. We survived the pandemic together. But the genesis of this course or of this topic tonight, hold on, what's in the chat? And by the way, to your question, Abigail, I actually will share this presentation with Ari to send out to everyone afterwards. But the genesis of this initially was part of a presentation that I did at the Irvine Chamber of Commerce a few years back. I actually think it might have been during right at the beginning of the pandemic. But it really comes out of a desire to help students understand some of the things that they need to be aware of as they go to work in a professional workplace. A lot of times what I hear in my position or have heard in my positions over the years from our business owners is that they hire folks who might have great technical knowledge, but don't have some of the hireability or employability skills that are really needed. And a lot of times what they'll say is, we would rather have people with these skills and teach them the technical than the other way around, because they don't have the time to teach these types of things in a workplace environment. And so again, today we're here to talk about some successful business etiquette and workplace behaviors. And so, and I'll say it one more time, feel free to ask any questions at any time. I'm happy to stop and answer them. So hold on, let me move this around on my screen. You know, as I was putting this together originally, and then this has evolved over time, I thought I'd start with some things that I wish I'd known a long time ago. And for those students, I've been in the workforce. Actually, my internship, my senior year of college was in 1988, I believe it was. So it's been quite a while. And so I thought back, you know, what are some things that I think have helped me be successful that I wish I'd known a long, long time ago? And one of those is that people want to work with people they like. Now, I'm not saying that you kowtow to everyone, or that you try and not be who you really are, be your authentic self. What I'm saying is that to be successful in business, and this can be anything from the CEO on down to an entry-level position, you need to be someone that people want to work with. And so there are a number of things that we're going to talk about today along those lines. The second one is flexibility and adaptability. And what I mean by that is, especially early on in your careers or early on in a job, you need to be able to fit into whatever role is needed by the company. And I think this is especially essential now because business is changing much more rapidly than it used to. My first day on the job as an intern at a TV station was the very first day that TV station had a computer. The very, very first day they had a computer. And so back then the pace of change was very, very slow, but the pace of change today in business is extremely rapid. And Ari can attest to this. You know, in the 2 years that I was at Vitalink, we completely overhauled the organization from top to bottom. The logo that you see up there is new. The website is new. All of the technology platforms that we used, all of those came along, and that required every single person on the team to be flexible and to be adaptable to change. So I wish I had known that a long time ago. There were some instances where I was not flexible, I was not adaptable, and I actually twice in my career faced the possibility of that I was not going to be continuing in the position or not be as successful in the position because of my inflexibility. Thirdly is there's a lot you don't know. And I say this, I actually should say there's a lot I do not know. There's a lot each of us does not know. And I think going into any business, into any job, understanding that can help you, because it opens up your mind to learn. Again, part of my flexibility, my inflexibility at times, was that I thought I knew everything. I thought I was smarter than other people, and I may have been smarter, but that didn't mean that I knew everything about a given situation. And so I think you can learn from everyone. I can attest to the fact that I've learned things from Ari. I was the president of Vitalink. I was Ari's boss, but you know what? On a daily basis, I learned things from her. She understood different aspects of the organization, and any organization you're working in, no matter what your position, you're not going to know everything about how everything fits together. And frankly, in my current, in my role at Vitalink and my current role at Coastline RLP is, as what essentially is the CEO of an organization, I have to, on a daily basis, recognize that there's a lot that I do not know. The fourth one is that the industry career job you start in may very well not be the one you finish in. And this is more common every day. I started, actually my first intern, I went to college for journalism. I did an internship at a TV station, but in sales, not in journalism. From there, I went to a startup that was a marketing play. From there, I went back to college to get my doctorate at the age of, let's see, that was 2009. So at the age of 42 to get my doctorate. Then I became an adjunct professor. Then I became an administrator running a college campus. From there, I went to run a nonprofit, and now I'm running an educational institution. I've had 4 careers. And so I think what you have to do is kind of sometimes go where the flow takes you and be open to those types of changes. But just understand that you may not be in the same industry or career for the rest of your life. Fifthly, is there's always someone smarter, faster, more disciplined than you, and you can learn from them. So I now have a team of about 20 that work with me on a daily basis at our campus. And then we have another 55 teachers and another 15 or so career specialists. They all are experts at what they do. I'm an expert of nothing that they do. And so a lot of them, and I work with people who are smarter than me. I work with people who are more disciplined than me. And so I go into every interaction, every situation, every relationship that I build, knowing this and seeking to learn. I think the successful people, and for you students, you're going to be successful if you become a lifelong learner. And a part of that is not just the academic learning, right? It's also learning from those around you and being open to that type of learning. And then lastly, my 6th thing, collaboration works. Frankly, these days, nothing gets done with one person. I had this really interesting discussion the other night with some folks over at University Lab Partners. Are any of the students familiar with the Meyer program, Medical Innovation Research and Entrepreneurship? So it's a program that 12 of the school districts in the county work on with their RLPs at University Lab Partners, where the students learn about medical innovation, they learn about research, and they work on a project, and they pitch it to patent lawyers and biotech experts. And there was one student who really wanted to do everything herself, and they actually made that student work with the rest of the group. And at the end of it, the student actually said, you know what, you were right. It was better collaborating with others. And so I think you have to be open to collaboration. Ari could speak to the fact that when I was at Vitalink, we did so much together as a team. No man is an island, no woman is an island. We all worked together, and we worked really well together. And the more you learn to be that good team player and collaborate with others, the better, the more successful you'll be. So that's kind of how I want to set the table. I actually have quite a few slides to go through today, and what we're going to talk about are these items here. So we're going to talk about why you should care about this. It may seem fairly intuitive on its face, but I do want to talk a little bit about that. We're going to do a little bit of do's and don'ts for business etiquette. Some of them will be no-brainers. Some of them might not be. Hopefully you'll learn something along the way. Workplace culture and you, and exactly what that means by workplace culture. And you may or may not be aware of this. Different workplaces, different industries have different types of cultures within them. And then within workplaces or cultures that or industries, there can actually be subcultures. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about etiquette in Zoomlandia. I'm very happy to see everyone's cameras on, because I got really tired of seeing this during the pandemic. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about handshakes. Really? Yes, we'll talk about handshakes. We're going to do a little bit of hard skills, soft skills, and what that means. And then finish it up with a discussion about social media and your career. Because that, frankly, is one of the most important things I think that students can really think about right now. Oh, I'm sorry, not finish it up with that. Finish it up with email etiquette. Because for those of us who are around and who've been around and who are in leadership positions, that email etiquette thing, while you may hate email, it is something that we use every day, and the etiquette around that is really important. All right, so starting off, why should you care? So what? I mean, first of all, because your professional reputation is the key to your career success. The work that I did when I moved back to Southern California, frankly, in a volunteer basis, helped me to build up a reputation in Orange County as someone who was focused on education and workforce development. Through that, I was actually invited to join the board of VitalLink. And because of that, I was then in a position to earn the president's spot at VitalLink. And then the work that we did there, actually, I was invited to apply for my current position. It wasn't something that I just saw advertised and submitted a resume. In fact, I wasn't going to, but I was invited to pitch for the position because of my professional reputation. Your reputation is all you have some days, and building that reputation is something that will be absolutely critical for your long-term career success. I promise you that. And then because you also should care, because workplace social norms, politics, and culture matter. And we'll talk a little bit about what exactly that means as we go along. But just know that for your career, for your success, those types of things do matter. And then the third one is because respect from your superiors means promotions, greater responsibility, and increased autonomy. When I started at VitalLink, Ari was what's called a coordinator. She's now a manager. Why is she a manager? Well, she had the respect of her superior, and she actually had the respect of both of her superiors, her immediate boss, who I promoted, and then me. And so because of that, Ari earned the promotion to manager, and it was because she exhibited these behaviors that we're going to talk about today. And so through that, she got greater responsibility, increased autonomy, and frankly, I have it on here somewhere else, more money, because I probably should move that up, but with that, with promotions, greater responsibility, and increased autonomy often comes more money. And I know a lot of times when we talk about money, we equate success with money, or happiness with money. I tend to have a different take, because I've been in jobs that paid more than what I'm doing now, where I was less happy. So I have a kind of a different feel about that. But you know, paying attention to your reputation, recognizing that there's workplace social norms and that culture matters and that there's politics, and it's not always a dirty word, and getting the respect from your superiors will lead to things like increased wages. And certainly, and don't get me wrong, I mean, trying to live in Orange County or in Southern California or California in general is an expensive proposition, and so money does matter. I'm not saying that at all. And then the other one is reputation with your peers. And frankly, for me, this is the one that that matters the most. I would rather be I would rather be respected by my peers than by my boss or the people that report to me, because they're the ones that that understand what I go through on a day-to-day basis. And if they look at me and respect me and the work that I do, they have a much better understanding of that. And so to me, that that is very, very important. And then you also should care because I think you want to be viewed as a leader. Leadership doesn't necessarily mean authority. It doesn't mean the top space in the hierarchy. Leadership should and could and does and should come from everywhere within an organization. Ari, when she was a coordinator, which is the entry-level position at Vitalink, she exhibited leadership. Leadership means taking responsibility, coming up with new ideas, making decisions that matter, recognizing changes that may need to be made in the organization, being creative and entrepreneurial, those types of things. And so, you know, you want to be viewed as a leader. And so exhibiting these types of behaviors will help set you up for that. And then lastly, and this kind of ties in with everything else, you want to be respected by your clients, whoever those are, right? For us at Vitalink, it was school districts and teachers and administrators and students and donors and businesses. When I was in the TV world, it was advertising agencies and buyers and clients, or you know, businesses. Just depends on who you are or where you are. So real quick quiz question, and I know we don't have a ton of students with us, but tell me what you think. When breaking the ice with a contact at the beginning of a meeting, it is appropriate to discuss such things as weather, politics, and traffic. Is that true or false? One of our students.
Somebody answer before I answer. It's free open discussion. You don't have to be nervous. Take a guess, 50-50. Okay, Abigail said false.
All right, that's correct. Why is it false? Anybody know? Because politics is the third rail. I don't know if you even know if you know that statement. You don't touch politics at the beginning of a meeting, especially today. This country is really divided. There are a lot of people in the middle, but people feel very, very strongly about their side of the aisle. And the last thing you want to do, especially at the beginning of a meeting or even with a new client, is to talk about politics, because you just don't know what their politics are. And these days, that is something that could lead to the end of that relationship or that business. And great point, Abigail. It's not relevant, right? Now, technically, you could argue weather and traffic aren't either, but sometimes you want to, you know, kind of ease into a meeting. And so sometimes you will talk about something that's not necessarily quite as serious. But politics and also I would say religion are other topics that you don't talk about. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the do's and don'ts. I love my little top 10 lists here, so please bear with me. First, maintain eye contact. I can't overemphasize the importance of this. I think you might find it odd if I sat here, even on a Zoom, and kind of stared off into the distance, but especially in person, look the person in the eye. It shows interest. It shows, especially when you're speaking to someone, it shows that you believe what you're saying. I used to use this as one of my the key components when I was interviewing salespeople, because I was a sales manager for about 20 years or so. If a salesperson couldn't look me in the eye during an interview, I would not hire them. Period. End of story. Because what it said to me is they didn't believe what they were saying. They didn't have the confidence to sit across from a buyer and sell what they were trying to sell. And so maintaining eye contact can be very, very important. We're going to talk about email etiquette a little bit, but you want to make sure that you practice email etiquette. Doing it right won't win you anything. Doing it wrong can lose you some things. And I'll talk again a little bit about that when we get to the end. Be on time. This one is, I think, a bit of a lost art. Perhaps in a place like Southern California, we always understand that, you know, we got plus or minus 5 minutes because sometimes you have traffic and, you know, that can be a little bit unpredictable. But what I would say is if you think it's going to take you 30 minutes to get someplace, then give yourself 45. And I know it's difficult to do. I am challenged by this all the time, but make sure you're punctual. Fourth, don't be a complainer. No one likes a complainer. So be a solution provider. If there's a problem, it's fine to bring up that there's a problem, but you also want to come up with a solution for it. Ari knows this for me. If there was a problem, I wanted her to come to me, not just to complain about it, but to have some ideas in mind for what we could do to solve the problem. Problems are always going to happen. That's actually your job a lot of times, is to solve problems. That's all I do every day. My job as superintendent is to solve problems. And so I'm never going to complain about it. And the folks who work for me aren't going to complain. We're going to come up with solutions. So don't be a complainer. You do not want to get the reputation as the person who works over there who always complains about everything that happens. It's too hot in here. My chair is not right. I don't like the way someone looked at me, on and on and on and on. This right here can be a real career limiter, because if you get a reputation as a complainer, it can come out to those trying to hire you, and it could prevent you from getting a job. You want to be mindful of how others work. And what I mean by this is the way I work every day is not the way Ari works. And it's not the way Maria works. And if the three of us were in the exact same position and we were each given the exact same task, we would go about it 3 different ways. Doesn't mean one way is right and 2 ways are wrong, or two ways are right and 1 way is wrong. What it means is that each of us comes at the situation, at the project, from a different angle. And so you need to be mindful of that. Just because it's the way I do it doesn't mean it's necessarily the right way. And this kind of goes back to also being willing to learn from others. Sometimes, you know, people can have great ideas. Because I did not come up through the traditional K-12 you know, education system into my role as a superintendent. I really have to practice this one on a daily basis, because my director of business services, he knows so much about our finance and legal and accounting, and I know nothing about it, right? And so when he says this is the way I want to organize my team, or this is the way we do what we do, I go with that, because he's the expert in that. Recognize nonverbal cues. This is one that used to drive me crazy with my daughter. I'm fine. There's nothing wrong. Her body language just absolutely screaming that there was something wrong, right? And so if you're working with someone and they're like, oh yeah, everything's fine, be mindful of those nonverbal cues, right? If they're looking off, if they're closed stance or things like that, because it can tip you off that perhaps maybe things aren't fine. And you know, a lot of times, and this is, you know, beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about today, but in terms of communication, sometimes as much as 80 to 90% of communication can be nonverbal. You want to make sure you dress appropriately. This changes over time, and it certainly has changed during the pandemic. And it depends on the workplace, and we're going to talk about a little bit about that in culture when we talk about culture within an organization. But you want to make sure that you dress appropriately, and appropriately depends on the situation. So I'll come back to that. Don't tear others down to your boss, to your coworkers. If you are a boss, especially don't tear someone down who's above you, next to you, to one of your employees. I mean, if I had said to to Ari, oh my gosh, I can't believe how bad Netta is at blah, 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 right? And Netta's Ari's boss. How would that make me look, right? It would absolutely destroy trust. And we went through a lot of this at a lot of discussion about this at Vitalink, about the fact that trust is the foundation of everything for a successful business. And so when you tear others down, when you're a complainer, people don't trust you, and you do not want to be the person who's not trusted. I promise you that. So along those lines, no gossiping. If you hear something, keep it to yourself, walk away. Do not gossip about anyone. I actually, I mentioned earlier, there were 2 points in my career where my career could have gone a completely different way. One of them was from gossiping. I just moved out to Los Angeles from from Indiana. I was in Kentucky before Indiana. From Indiana, was out at happy hour with some friends, and partook in some gossiping that I shouldn't have. And it got back to the person I was gossiping about, who was someone in my office who had a lot of power, and it could have been a career limiting move. So don't gossip. And then you may not think this is important, but this is so unbelievably important. If you go to a business meal, display appropriate business meal behaviors. Practice that etiquette. If you're unsure, ask someone else. This has not been happening for the last 2 years. Last night was the very first professional function dinner that I had been to at a hotel lobby in 2 years and change. But I was at a table with 10 other people. And so if I had been slurping my soup or noodles or something like that, somebody would have noticed. And I know it seems superficial, but that kind of stuff tends to matter to people. Okay, so another quiz question. Unlike social etiquette, office and business etiquette are primarily based on what? Hierarchy and power, personal relations between coworkers, common sense and courtesy, or A and C? What do you guys think? And you can answer in the chat if you want.
Abigail said D. Yeah. Anyone else?
Derek says D. Yeah, you guys are right. It's hierarchy and power. I wish it wasn't the case, but it is. I'm the new superintendent, and so some of the office and business etiquette that happens comes from me and my views of it, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in culture in a minute. And then also common sense and courtesy. So that makes sense. So good job. So next we're going to talk about corporate culture and etiquette. Really, what do we mean by that? We mean the beliefs and behaviors that determine how a company's employees and management interact and handle outside business transaction. It develops organically over time from the cumulative traits of the people the company hires, and it often flows from the top down. So every organization that you're ever going to work for will have a culture. All of them will be different. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I worked for, again, a TV advertising sales organization. Very formal, very conservative. And by conservative, I don't mean like Christian conservative, religious conservative, I shouldn't say Christian, religious conservative, or political conservative. I mean conservative in our behaviors and how we acted. So ties, suits, you had to answer the phone on the second ring. Everything was very prescriptive. Hi, thank you for calling HRP. This is Brian. How may I help you? Everyone had to understand how to answer the phone like that. It was very uniform, and that was the culture. It was also a culture that was characterized, it was very hierarchical. New York, the people in New York, those were the bosses. And from there, it came down to, the region vice president, to the sales managers, to the salespeople, to the sales assistants. Everyone had their role. They were very clearly defined, reporting roles and duties. And so it was a very, very conservative culture. At Vitalink, because I started there 6 weeks before the pandemic hit, and because primarily much of our time was spent on Zoom. We had a much more freewheeling and relaxed culture. It was one where, because most of the types of work that we were doing was to build events like this, when we were actually working, it was fine to be in, t-shirts and jeans. I mean, we didn't dress up a whole lot. And because we were a small organization that wasn't super hierarchical, you know, I would take out the trash. I mean, everyone did everything because everyone had to do everything. And so, and there's everything in between, those two different aspects. My current company, and it's interesting, at Coastline ROP, because we've primarily had, and Maria probably knew my predecessor, Carol Hume. Did you? And maybe, oh, okay. So anyway, my predecessor was there for almost 30 years, 6 as superintendent. And so she was very steeped in the organization. And so the organization didn't change very quickly. Now I'm a new superintendent there, and I'm a little more relaxed, a little less formal than she was. And so you're starting to see, and I've actually heard some people comment on the fact that the culture is changing a little bit. So really, what makes up all of this? So dress code is one of the things that comes to mind. As I said, the first company I worked at, suits and ties. I had, at one point in that career, I probably had, I don't know, 10 suits in my closet. And then when I got to the university I worked at, which was very not formal, and then at Vitalink, I had 1 suit. And now that I'm at Coastline RLP, I'm actually, I'm not wearing a jacket right now, but I had a tie and a jacket on this morning because I had a board meeting. It was my 3rd day in a row of wearing suits. So I actually had to buy 2 new suits when I started this new position. I don't know if you knew that or not, Ari. It's a little more formal, but dress code is actually one of those aspects of corporate culture. And so you need to be mindful of that. If you're working at Blizzard, doing video games, those people, I'm surprised sometimes when I see them wearing clothes. I mean, they are, it's flip-flops and shorts is absolutely fine. I lived in Seattle for years. At Microsoft, there was no dress code, really whatsoever. For me now at Coastline, we do jeans every Friday, casual day every Friday, but the rest of the week we are business casual. So it's just going to depend upon where you work. The business hours is also an aspect of culture, because we are an educational institution. Educational institutions, by and large, tend to start and stop at a fairly specific time. We are 7:30 to 4:30, and at 4:30, it's like I can look out my window and just watch everyone leaving, and they leave on time every day. It's part of the culture of the organization. When they're there, they work their butts off, but they leave at 4:30. At Vitalink, we worked until we were done working. Some days it was 4, some days it was 5, some days it was, Ariel probably, I guess, she's working until at least 5:30 tonight. But it just depends. And then there are organizations who say, I don't care when you work, just get your hours done, right? And I know there was a time when Ari would have to drive in from far away to the Vitalink office, and she would come in super early so that she could beat the traffic come in, and then she would leave a little bit early so she could beat the traffic going home. And a lot of that's going to be prescribed by the culture of the organization. Hierarchy and power is another aspect of corporate culture that you need to be aware of, and in particular, how much they matter. In the IT world, it may not matter as much. Certainly in smaller organizations, it doesn't matter much. They tend to be very what we call flat organizations. That means there's not a lot of positions between the president and the entry-level position. My wife works for one of the largest alcohol distributors in the country, actually the largest alcohol distributor in the country. They are beasts of hierarchy and power. They have layer upon layer upon layer of VP. They have like VPs that report to VPs that report to VPs that report to VPs. She's downstairs listening to me, probably shaking her head. But that's what I mean. And so in there, that hierarchy really matters. And by power, I mean, decision-making authority and things like that. And so in a small organization, you may have decentralized power. Ari, there were certain things that I had to approve. But you know what? By and large, Ari and Dennis and Netta, the managers of the organization, they could make decisions, and I would back them up on it because I'd hired them to be in those positions. And so, it wasn't that big of a deal. They had the ability to go spend the money as they saw fit on a project. Certainly, I had to be aware of any big ticket items. Now at my current position, everything that gets spent, every single penny comes across my desk, every single one. I get a requisition through an online program, and I sign off on every single penny that we spend. And it's because of the culture of the organization. Part of that also is that we're a government entity, so we're spending the taxpayers' money, and so it has to be accounted for. Office setup is certainly something that's part of it. Whether everyone has offices, whether it's an open setting, with desks everywhere. Oftentimes you'll see conservative organizations with conservative dress codes and very rigid business hours, and a lot of hierarchy are going to have offices because offices indicate some sort of prestige, whether right or wrong. And so office setup is another aspect of this. Leading by example versus micromanaging is something that you'll see within an organization. And so what I mean by this is I tend to want to be the kind of manager and leader who leads by example. And at Vitalink, I expected Ari and Dennis and Netta to do that as well, but not necessarily micromanage every little aspect of the organization. Okay, so Ari did not have to go to her boss for every little thing that she did. There are organizations, and I've worked for organizations like this, where there was one person at the top who wanted to see everything that was printed out, proofread everything that was printed out before it went out, and micromanaged every little aspect of the organization. And so a lot of that's going to be prescribed by the culture. And so if you are the type of person who doesn't want to be micromanaged, and you are interviewing for an organization where the organizational culture is one of micromanaging, you probably should look somewhere else. If you are someone who is a micromanager and you're interviewing for a job where people lead by example and it's much more decentralized, then you should probably move on. You need to make sure that the jobs that you are applying for in terms of these aspects of culture are ones that match up with what your values are. Communication is certainly something. There are a lot of organizations where communication is very closed. And so not a lot of what I mean by that is not a lot of information is shared with everyone. I tend to be, and I think Ari would attest to this, I share a lot. I told my managers just about everything. Within, certainly there are some things for legal reasons that you can't discuss. But by and large, I believed in a lot of open communication and across the organization in all ways. So up, down, side to side, diagonally. And there are some organizations where they want information closely held. So you want to make sure, again, that your communication style matches up well with the organization that you're working for. Camaraderie, whether there's a tight-knit group at an organization. I've worked for both. Some where it's like everyone puts their head down, does their thing, and goes home at the end of the day. And then there are organizations where people get along really well together. They're friends. They go out to lunch. They will go out and do things on the weekend. Those types of things. So just be aware that that's a part of the culture of an organization. We talked a little bit about teamwork and collaboration a minute ago, but that again is another important aspect of the culture of an organization. And then a positive versus a negative culture. I prefer positive culture organizations, and what I mean by that is organizations that are about making a difference, doing good things rather than focusing on the negative. And I think there are some cultures where where the approach from management is that people are bad and need to be taught how to be good. And my approach is that people are great and need to be given the freedom to become even better. And I think, and I actually spoke about this a little bit the other night at University Lab Partners. For you students, I actually think that that is a big issue with people of my generation looking at our students. They take kind of a negative approach and say, oh, you guys are lazy, entitled, stuck on your phones. All you ever do is this, on and on and on. You've probably, I'm seeing Brandon shake his head. You've probably heard some of this, right, from adults. I don't believe that. I don't buy into it. And I think it's harmful to our businesses and to our economy to take that approach. I believe it's our job as business leaders to find ways to make you successful rather than to look at you and say, this is what's wrong and I need to fix it. I don't think, Abigail, Brandon, Derek, and Zhang, that you have things that are wrong with you. I think you do things that are different than the way I've done them and my generation has done them. And that doesn't mean that they're wrong. And so it's my responsibility as the CEO of my organization to find ways to help you be successful. And that's what I mean by this. So find an organization that takes a positive approach rather than a negative approach. And always in your life, you'll go a lot farther and you'll be a heck of a lot happier if you take a positive versus a negative approach. And one little anecdote about this, I'm really good friends with a woman who works over at Octane. It's a startup accelerator, if you haven't heard of it. She used to be at the Irvine Chamber, and she likes to tell this great story. She was at a conference, and they put up all these words on, and they said, you know what, you've seen these. This is about the current generation, right? And it was the things that I just mentioned: entitled, lazy, you know, on and on and on. All these, you know, negative words, and you know, everybody's shaking their head and saying, yeah, those millennials or those Gen Z or you know whatever, and then the next slide, they'd actually pulled back from the list, and it was the cover of a Life magazine from 1964. And so the point was, every generation has said this about the youngest generation for the last 60 years. They just have. And so when you hear that type of stuff, just tune it out and go be your best self. That's what I would say. All right. Oops, sorry. Another quiz questions for you. A coworker shares some office gossip rumors with you. We talked a little bit about this a minute ago. What do? Thank him, pass the stories on, check it out with others, politely listen, keep the information to yourself, or post it on social media immediately. What do you guys think? Yeah, C is absolutely right. You know, if you feel strongly enough, you might advise the person to keep it to themselves. But probably the best thing in an office setting is just to politely listen and move on. Keep it to yourself. You don't want to participate, and you certainly don't want to post it on social media. And again, we're going to talk about social media later on. So a little bit about Zoom etiquette. So basically, it's the same ground rules as an in-person meeting. And what do I mean by that? So you want to introduce people at the beginning if it's in a formal meeting and there aren't too many people on it. If you've got 80 people, and I've been on this call where there's 80 people and they ask them to all to introduce themselves. So don't do that, actually. I should probably put that in here. If it's over about 20 people, please don't introduce everyone. But if it's a small setting and it's a business meeting, it's important to introduce everyone at the beginning, especially if you're just getting to know others. And we did this a lot, and we learned a lot about this, didn't we, Ari, over time at Final Link, because the pandemic hit six weeks after I started, and we didn't even have Zoom accounts, much less know anything about Zoom etiquette. So we actually had to go out and buy the Zoom accounts and then learn to create the backgrounds and, you know, on and on and on. And so, but, you know, one of the things you always want to make sure you do at the beginning of the meeting is to introduce everyone. Ensure that you have a clean, work appropriate background. I love this story. This is one of my favorite stories ever. So I was moderating a discussion with a local community college it was what's called an advisory panel. And so we had 3 people from the community college and about 10 other people from the industry. I think it was actually, I think it was either real estate or child development industry. And a woman was talking, and her husband walked out and stood behind her without a shirt, and turned around and bent over so his rear was in the camera over her shoulder. And I thought, oh, I should screen grab this, right? So you want to ensure you have a work appropriate background. You also should probably make sure that people understand, I'm going on a Zoom call, honey, don't walk behind me shirtless. So but make sure that you have a clean work appropriate background. Show your face. I think this is I think this is important, and I get why, especially 2 years in, people are reluctant to share their faces. But for me as a presenter in a situation like this, if everyone had their cameras off, I don't think I would be as effective. I think I'm okay effective in a Zoom setting. I'd be much more effective in an in-person setting, because then I can walk around the room and do things like that. If you can't tell, I have a hard time sitting still. But showing your face is really important, especially on an on a first-time meeting with someone. People want to see your face. You want to look into the camera when you're talking instead of looking at yourself. One of the things that your eyes are naturally drawn to your own picture. And I actually have trouble with this as well. And so if I am right now, because it's a big group, it doesn't bother me as much because I feel like I'm looking at everyone. But if it was, let's say, just me and Maria, I would hide myself. I would hide my self view, because I would find myself, rather than looking at the camera, which indicates that I'm looking at Maria, I would find my eyes naturally drifting over to see what I was doing. And it's natural human nature. It doesn't mean that I'm egotistical, which we could argue the merits of that all day long. But above that statement all day long, don't say anything, Ari. But it's just natural that your eyes are drawn to yourself. It's almost like there's a mirror there. And so I think it's important to hide the self view. You also want to eliminate distractions and focus on the agenda. My wife just sent me an email. Thank you, Sally. Because I forgot to turn my notifications off, it popped up right here, and it distracted me. It was a distraction that I thought I had turned off. I turned off my Slack notifications. I didn't turn off my email notifications, and my system's set up to pop them up on the screen. And the reason I say this is because the most important thing for me right now during this 90 minutes is you guys. And if something else pops up on my screen, walks by, or grabs my attention, it is natural human behavior to have your eyes drawn to that. And so what I mean is, by this is shut down your email, shut down, if you have Slack, if you have other communications software or programs, shut all those down. You also want to make sure that you don't have any other programs running in the background that could get in the way. The only things I have running right now are obviously my notification system, which I didn't silence, but PowerPoint and Zoom, because I don't want all those other things as a distraction. And then be aware of your audio and video settings. I don't know how many Zoom meetings our students have been on, but I think I've been on, I'd hate to say, over the last 2 years, let's say 2,000. I can't tell you how many times someone has left their mic on and they start talking and it drowns out everyone else, right? So you all have your mics off, so you obviously have learned this, but there are a lot of people who have not learned this. And I can't tell you how many calls I've been on where someone's out walking their dog and a car drives by and honks, and you can hear it, right? So you want to be aware of your audio and video settings. And then if you're the host, stick around, right? Ari's the host. This is her event. This is Vitalink's event. She's going to be the last one out. She's going to be the one that ends the meeting, right? It's important that you stick around in case anybody has questions. And by the way, I'll stick around if anybody has questions as well. Okay. Any questions on anything so far? I'm going to take a break so I can get some water because I've been talking too much. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. Again, I love doing this stuff, so I'm happy to help. All right. So the next one, why your handshake matters and how to get it right. It doesn't. Handshakes have gone the way of the dodo. Okay. Although they are starting to come back a little bit. I had a couple of people last night who wanted to shake hands. What I would say for our students is that handshakes used to be really important. They've gotten less important over the years. Then during the pandemic, they went completely away. And now that they're coming back, don't feel forced to shake someone's hand if you don't want to, right? We all have to have our own level of comfort with human contact because it could mean that you get sick, right? And so certainly during the height of the pandemic, no one was shaking hands. We got into either the fist bump or the elbow bump and things like that. And so to that point, there's a magazine. It's a great magazine if you're ever looking for information about business, called Fast Company. They did some surveys a while ago, and 30% of respondents said they'd like to shake hands less often than they did before the pandemic. 26% said they would never want to do it at all. And then 54% said they'd be happy to never shake someone's hand again. I actually fall into that group. And then 54% said they would only do so if required in a formal professional setting. And so, for our students, handshakes may never be the norm again, but just be aware, especially if you're out in a business setting, in a work setting, someone may want to shake your hand. You are perfectly well within your rights to say, no, I'm not comfortable to shake hands. I was out with a group of friends actually on Sunday, and one person is immunocompromised and said, I'm not doing hugs. No big deal, right? Before the pandemic, some of the, saying some of these things might have made people go, what, why? But these days, no judgment whatsoever. So you do you. Okay, another quiz question. Your friend from college joins your company. They're your boss now. How should you interact with her? Talk informally. Don't take her orders seriously. Show disdain and jealousy because she was offered a higher position while you weren't. Break your friendly ties, or treat her like a superior in the office and as a friend outside of the office. What do you guys think? Ari lived this, didn't you, Ari? Yeah, you guys are right. D. Treat her like a superior in the office and as a friend outside. There's no reason why those two things can't coexist. Ari, do you have any thoughts on this?
I agree. They can coexist. There may be and well, in my opinion, there's no really difficult times. I do look up to my superior as she's a role model. And we do have times where we go back and forth, but genuinely it's because she's kind of teaching me leadership skills that I need, and also helping me kind of better understand the situation if I do get confused, especially since even though I'm in a management position, I'm always learning something new. So you have to be willing to learn. So I definitely could back that
up. Ari, so can I share the background of what you're talking about? So Ari's boss used to be a coordinator with Ari. They used to share the same office. And when I started, we had an opening, someone needed to be promoted, and the decision was made to promote Netta. It had nothing to do with Ari's skill set or anything. I knew eventually that Ari would make a great manager. And so then when Netta was promoted to senior director, we promoted Ari to manager. And I thought the two of you did a really fantastic job managing that relationship. It was actually one of the things that I was worried about. And I think I actually said that to you, Ari. So, kudos for handling that. If that ever happens to any of you, it can be a little bit of a weird situation. It's always a weird situation when for the new boss coming in, because they never know how people are going to react. And when I joined Coastline RLP, one of my directors used to be one of my bosses. He used to be on the board of directors at Vitalink. So he went from being my boss to me being his boss, which was a really interesting one as well. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about hard skills and soft skills. So what are they? What do we mean by hard skills and soft skills? So hard skills are typically what we talk about in terms of technical skills that you learn through your education or experience. So for instance, I was recently at Irvine High School watching an automotive technology class. They were learning to take the brakes off of a car and fix the master cylinder. That's a hard skill, right? Learning to use a 3D printer, that is a hard skill. So we're talking about really more technical skills. They tend to be, we consider them teachable abilities or skill sets that we can measure, right? So if someone is fixing brakes, we can tell if they've done a good job at it or a bad job at it really pretty easily. If we put the brakes on the car and they take off and they crash into someone because the brakes didn't work, you know what? That's pretty quantifiable that they did a bad job, and we need to work on those skills. Hopefully that's not going to happen. And these are often the skills that are listed in a job description, and they differentiate the different occupations. So in my accounting department, I have four folks who work in accounting. One is the director of business services. His skill set is his hard skills are much different than those of the person who's doing payroll, right? She tends to be her job description would focus really around payroll, processing the payroll, understanding it, making sure that the correct taxes are taken out, that the correct retirement contributions taken out, all of those things, and it's reported accurately on pay statements and things like that. Then I have someone who does accounts receivable. What that means is that they are in charge of making sure that we are getting the payments in for the work that we do. And then I have somebody who does accounts payable. Accounts payable is the person who actually goes out and acquires technology. They buy the computers, or like we just installed an entire Mac computer lab at Estancia High School. So so the accounts payable person is in charge of paying those bills. And now that doesn't mean that they couldn't work on each other's jobs, but they certainly have different hard skills for each of their jobs. So then you differentiate that with soft skills. And by soft skills, a lot of times we talk about these, and I tend to think that soft skills is a bit of an antiquated term. I prefer hireability or employability skills, but these are the skills that are subjective. They're much harder to measure, right? So so you're, and I'll talk about these in a minute, so bear with me. But again, they're also known as people skills, interpersonal skills. They're personal, they shape how you interact and work with other people. And they may be in the job description. Most job descriptions say that they want communication skills, but they are needed across most occupations. So go back to my discussion just now of my business services office, where I have a director, payroll, accounts receivable, and accounts payable. I want all four of them to have roughly the same soft skills, right? I want them to be able to work together, collaborate, have teamwork, communicate, critical thinking, those types of things. But that is much harder to measure and to quantify. Does that make sense to everyone? So these are just some examples of what we talk about when we talk about hard skills versus soft skills. So are you bilingual? Do you know search engine optimization? Can you do data mining? Can you do, what else is on here? Programming languages. Do you know Python or Java? Those types of things. Those are hard skills. Soft skills, again, and many companies will tell you, bring me someone with great soft skills and some basic technical knowledge, and I'll teach them the hard skills. Your dependability, open-mindedness, teamwork, creativity, problem solving, critical thinking. What we're talking about today, successful workplace behaviors and business etiquette, that is considered a soft skill. Your willingness to learn, empathy. Oh my gosh, I cannot overstate the importance of empathy, especially today. Adaptability, all of these different things. Work on these and master these, and you will be successful in your career, because you can learn the hard skills of a job. And if you go into an interview with me and your hard skills, Abigail and Brandon, are the same thing, and one of you has better employability, hireability, soft skills than the other, guess who I'm going to hire, right? I want someone who can come in and fit in on the team. We just hired the accounts payable person, I interviewed her, I did not ask about her hard skills. That I left that up to the director. I was really more concerned about her soft skills. And Ari will attest to this. When I was the final interview for everybody we hired when I was there, I didn't talk about hard skills with them. I wanted to make sure they would fit in with the team, because that is what really mattered at the end of the day. And so the last thing that I'll say about this is it's not the job you do, it's how you do the job that matters. Okay. There are certain jobs where nailing the hard skills will get you ahead. But there are more where the soft skills are going to be more important, especially in a service economy, which is what we have right now. You know, if you're a brilliant physicist, you're going to be more likely to work for NASA than an average physicist, no matter your soft skills, right? But for most of the jobs that we have in our economy, get in your car and drive down any street and ask yourself, is that business, is that going to be more important to have hard skills or soft skills? And look at every business along the street, and I guarantee you, you're going to find more businesses that are more interested in soft skills than they are in the hard skills. Any questions about any of this? Okay. So for our students, here's the problem. How do you demonstrate these, right? You don't have a career. I have a career, right? I could walk into the interview with Coastline RLP and say, hey, I actually had some press clippings that I could pull out. I pulled out a newspaper and said, see, look what I did, from something that I had done with Vitalink. I had a resume that demonstrated my soft skills and my hard skills. So the question is, how do you demonstrate both, right? Or either, without having had a job in that area. So what I'd say for you, our students, is that if they're looking for a hard skill, such as skill in a programming language, you can point to a program you created with that. It is much harder to point to specific evidence that you possess a soft skill. For instance, how do you show you have a strong work ethic? So what you have to do is find a way to demonstrate you possess the quality, right? So you want to share examples of times when you used it, right? So you know, you could say to an employer, you know, I worked on this project, and I had a group of 3 people, and they all naturally looked to me as the leader because I did this, this, and this, and use examples of a time when you displayed strong soft skills or employability skills, and that's really going to be about the only way that you can do it. Okay, back to quizzes. It's a casual Friday. You have a meeting with a client. How should you dress that day? Casual, a little like nicer than usual, but nothing too formal. In your pajamas or in business casual? What do you think? This is a trick question. Let's see if anybody gets it. Ari.
I can't answer because I'm like half business, half pajamas right now.
So it depends.
Yeah.
Right? That's why I say it's a trick question. It depends. Oh, what'd you guys write? Be your second option. So in most settings, I would say that, right? And I think in most settings, most people would understand, hey, it's casual Friday, you know, and you're perfectly okay to say to someone, you know, hope you don't mind, I'm dressed down a little bit. It's our casual Friday. Most people get the whole concept of casual Friday. If you're on a Zoom call, I cannot tell you how many people, nice shirt up top, pajamas on the bottom. And that's perfectly okay. Again, it depends on the situation. If it's in person, right? If I had a board meeting though, on a Friday, and it's normally casual Friday, and by the way, I report to 5 elected officials, right? So these are boards of trustee members from school districts, so they tend to be a little more formal. I'd be in a suit and tie, right? So it depends on, it will depend upon the situation. If you work for an IT company, every day is casual Friday usually. All right, so let's talk about social media and networking. So Business News Daily said this, social media, great platform for employees and job seekers to post about their accomplishments. However, a slip up can cost you your career or ruin your chances of getting a job. Being used to fire people based on their ill-advised social media behavior is what's been happening. Okay, the things you post never go away. Okay, and just because, or the things that those around you post of you, never go away, and you have to be very careful. Some companies will actually put it in their employment manuals that if you say anything negative about the organization on social media, or if you do anything that casts the organization in a poor light, you can be dismissed like that. And it has happened. There's a story, I don't know if you guys have heard this. There's a story of a reporter a few years ago who made kind of a snarky, nasty comment on Twitter, got on a plane. While she was on the plane, I think she was flying from like the US to New Zealand or something. So she was in the air for like 20 hours. While she was on the plane, the tweet blew up. By the time she landed, she had been fired from her position. Okay, it happens, and and just go do a search on it if you don't believe me. It happens a lot. Social media can be really great for your personal brand. We'll talk a little bit about that. And from a business and from a reputation standpoint. One of the other things that I'll say is certain social media platforms are for business, certain are for personal use. Do not mix the two. And for those like Facebook, which really are for personal use, do not post things that if your boss or your grandmother saw it, they would not be okay with it. I always use my grandma, right? Would I say this if I knew Grandma Dozer was going to view this? And if I wouldn't, then don't post it. All right, so I love this I love this cartoon. Forget the resume, son. Let's just take a look at what you posted on your Facebook instead. The last person I interviewed, as soon as I got a resume, what do you think I did? What do you think the first thing I did was? I did a Google search. I went to Facebook. I went to LinkedIn. I went to Twitter, right? I made sure that there was nothing objectionable that was out there, okay? And I can tell you, most bosses for serious, for career positions, maybe if you're applying for a part-time position to work in and out, that's not going to happen, right? But for anyone I hired at Vitalink or Webster University or in my current job at Coastline RLP, I check this. And in fact, we actually do background checks. There are background checks as well. So you need to be aware of these. Social media can impact your career. So avoid posts on topics such as drug and alcohol use. You want to avoid poor grammar and spelling. You want to avoid political rants, especially today. And I'll go back to this. I actually did more of this before I got into a position of authority at Webster University, and then I just stopped it, right? Because I just realized, you know what, this is inappropriate for the position that I have. I don't want people to know me for this. I want people to know me for my work. Complaining about bosses or coworkers. I mean, there are memes that have gone around about that, that have been created about this. There's a story of someone who, I think they started complaining about someone that they bumped into on a train or something, and they said something snarky to the person, and then when they walked in to the office, it was to interview with that person, and it had come out that they posted on Twitter or something like that. So you do not want to complain about most bosses or coworkers. First of all, you don't want to complain about them to anyone. I could say something to my wife because I know it'll never leave this house, but you know what? She's about the only person in the world that I'd trust. You don't want to post tasteless comments. You certainly don't want to mock any customers. LinkedIn is for business. We'll talk about LinkedIn in just a minute. Others are for friends. okay, with some exceptions, depending upon who you are and your position. I'll say this, I use Twitter, but I use it solely for business purposes, because most of Twitter is heinous. I don't engage in it in the way a lot of people engage in Twitter. I use it for business purposes only. Facebook and Instagram. Instagram kind of goes back and forth for me, but I mostly use it not to post anything, but to interact or to react to things for business. And then my Facebook is just my personal stuff. All right. So LinkedIn is social media for your career, and building a great reputation, maintaining a portfolio, participating in your community of professionals. These are the cornerstones of career success. And so LinkedIn helps you develop a showcase mindset. And once you have that mindset, you're able to have a complete repository of all of your accomplishments. This is your place to brag about what you're doing. Okay. For our students, raise your hand. Do you have a LinkedIn profile? Okay. If you don't, go do one. Okay. And please start building your network now by connecting with me. Okay. I cannot understate the importance of this for career. LinkedIn has had a bigger impact on my career than any other technology. Okay. I have used it, and I think Ari would attest to this. We used it to great effect to spread the message and the mission of Vitalink. We used it to great effect to fundraise for the Pedal Ed program that we did and for the other programs that we did. We used it to great effect to recruit businesses, and Ari would come to me because she knows that I have a network of like 3,000 or 4,000 people. Ari would come to me and say, I need an advisor in engineering. Do you know anyone? And I would dig through, or I would post something, and whoosh, in would come people volunteering to work with us. It absolutely works when used correctly. And so I would say, set up your LinkedIn profile, put a picture on it. You are certainly perfectly fine to do this in high school. I had my daughter start hers in high school, and then start building your network. I connected with some students. I used to run the ethics forum for the Greater Irvine Chamber of Commerce, and I did it for a couple of years at Irvine High School. And I recently had one of the students who went through the program with me for 2 years, who had connected with me on LinkedIn, reach out to me for a letter of recommendation for a program that she was applying for. And you know what? I did it. And frankly, she wouldn't have been able to find me because people move around so much in their careers. The one place anyone will ever be able to find me, because my email address has changed 3 times in 3 years for work. The place people will be able to find me is LinkedIn, because that's where I am on LinkedIn every single day. And we use it for Coastline RLP. We used it for Vitalink. So please set it up and build it over time. It gives you an opportunity. You can post. I have articles that I've posted on there. I've got links to some of the press coverage that we received for the Pedal Ed program that we did at Vitalink. On and on and on and on. There are a lot of things that you can do on there, and I can guarantee you that people will go and look at, as you build your network, people will go and look at your profile. What I would say for you is be judicious with your LinkedIn requests. So don't just go find some random person that you want to connect with and try and connect with them. You want to have a purpose in mind. That said, please do feel free to use what I call the student card. Okay. You can get away with this where Ari and I cannot, right? Because you can say, I'm a student who is interested in learning about your career path. All right. If you ever want to engage someone to learn about how they got to the position they got to, and this is called building social capital, play the career card. Hi, my name's Abigail. I'm a student at such and such high school. I'm interested in learning about you and how you got to your position in your career, and would love to connect with you. You probably will not find many people who will deny that request. I would grant it. I would love that. people who've been around in a while in their career, they love to talk about themselves and where they've been and how they got there. So play that card, take advantage of that, but do be judicious with those LinkedIn requests. Don't just do it randomly. Have a purpose in mind for it. You do want to use a professional looking headshot. Ask for recommendations, right? So if you're in a club at school, ask the advisor of the club. If you have a favorite teacher that you really love, ask the teacher. If you have a clergy member, like my daughter asked her rabbi for some and some people from the temple for a recommendation. Ask for those recommendations, because how other people see you and by showing a willingness to recommend you on your LinkedIn profile, and there's a section for recommendations, really says a lot about you as a person. And then you can use it for research into colleges and companies. I don't know, if any of you are juniors and thinking, trying to start thinking about, all right, where am I going to go next year? But as you do that, one of the things I had my daughter do was to go on and look for the LinkedIn profiles of the chair people of the department that she wanted to apply to at the university she wanted to apply to, and learn about them that way. We did pre-pandemic, she's a sophomore now, but so in 2019, we flew out to the East Coast and we hit every university that had an astronomy program, from Johns Hopkins up to Tufts in Boston and everything in between. And so I would have her go on LinkedIn while we were driving on the road and find and reach out to the person and connect with them. And she actually got to sit down with people like the chair of the astronomy or the astrophysics department at the University of Pennsylvania. She ended up at Wesleyan University, the chair of the department, spent an hour with her, gave her a tour of the telescopes, and actually asked her to sit down on a class. And it was because she used LinkedIn in an appropriate way to reach out to those folks, and they were more than willing to talk with her. And then follow companies. You can follow different companies that you're interested in. That way, if you ever apply for a job with Google or SpaceX or whatever, you can talk about what's going on there. You want to join groups. I belong to a number of different groups that are industry specific. You can actually learn about a lot of what's going on in the industry. You can also then be connected to people within your industry, and then post about topics that interest you to show that dedication. I'm going to spend the rest of my career on career technical education and workforce development. And so I post a lot about that. I write about it, I post about it, I find articles, I share them, I comment on them. I think people would tell you, if you would meet any of my connections, that I am someone that posts regularly. And I would like to think intelligently about career technical education, and that has helped me kind of build up my brand, if you will, and build a following about certain areas. And you're not going to do that now, but over time, it is something that you can certainly set yourself up for. And then using your LinkedIn profile URL and resumes and for college admissions. I don't know, you may not be able to get one as simple as mine, which is, linkedin.com/in/your name. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But try and get one that's close and make it easy and include it on any applications that you use. It'll make it easy for somebody to find you. And then we also want to talk a little bit about this in terms of networking, and I know we're starting to run out of time, so I'll move as quickly as I can. I cannot tell you this enough. The people will have a great effect on your career. Networking has never been more important than it is in this pandemic. So I know it's difficult. It can be difficult and scary to reach out to others and try and build that network. But I can tell you that I'm in the last 3 jobs I've gotten were because of my network, because of people that I knew. The current job I'm in, the woman who was the superintendent before me recommended me to the board. That's why I got the interview. They called me. They said, you were recommended to us. We want you to apply for this position. And that happened during the pandemic. My network got me to the position I'm in during the pandemic. The job market is a little bit like an iceberg. What you see above the water is only about 20% of what's out there. Almost 80% of the jobs that are out there, you can't find them. They don't exist on Indeed or Monster or LinkedIn. Okay. And so a lot of times, especially as you move up in your career, it's going to be about who you know. And sometimes just as much as what you know. So networking is absolutely critical. And as I said, nearly 80% of positions are filled through personal and professional connections. I actually have a friend who's my age who spent 20 years being shy about networking. And I'm going to rip on down here to the bottom. Because he didn't do these last items. When he sold his company and then decided to look for the next job, he'd been a CEO. He's had a heck of a time finding a job because he didn't build a network, right? He had a small company. He did really well, but most of his clients and most of the business folks that he worked with were actually overseas. They can't really help him get a job here. And so, he didn't do a lot of this. So don't be shy about networking. Always treat those contacts with respect. Ask non-threatening, respectful, intelligent questions. Hey, and I love this. I learned this from Sean O'Keefe. We don't use, and you shouldn't use the phrase, I would like an informational interview with you, because the word interview connotes, is a connotation for something that you don't want it to be for. You're not looking for an interview. What you want to do is have a career conversation with someone. I would like to have a career conversation with you, Abigail, to learn how you got to your current position and any advice that you could offer for a student like myself who's looking to break into the industry. People will respond to that. And then do your research in advance. Don't forget to close the loop. By that, I mean, say thank you. Say thank you, say thank you, say thank you. It goes a long, long way. And especially handwritten notes are a lost art. I know a lot of people think you should send an email. If it's important and you really want it, send a handwritten thank you note. It'll mean a lot. And then this bullet here, don't network only when you need something. I cannot tell you how many people during the last two economic downturns reached out to me and said, oh, I wish I'd worked on my network the past 2, 3, 4 years because I need it now. I just got laid off. Thought I'd be in this job for the rest of my life. Got laid off, need a job. And so the time to work on your network is when you don't need it. All right, I'm going to skip this quiz question so that we can get through email etiquette real quick. And I'm not going to go through the 2 examples I have, but just give you a couple quick do's. Get a professional email address. Don't do drunkpartyboy@gmail.com. My niece is 24 and has one that's Sammy Bear 56. It's just not a professional email address. Get a professional email address, right? When you're sending an email, clear, direct subject line. You want to be formal if you don't know the person, right? Dr. Dozer, Mr., Ms., whatever. Use the same sentence structure and paragraph as a letter. Stay short and to the point. And then create an email signature with your contact information, your title, your LinkedIn profile, those types of things. What you don't want to do is use a bunch of exclamation points all through your email. Avoid humor. It is not contextual. People can't read your tone. You also don't want to use any slang, text speak, or emojis. They don't really bother me, but some people really get twisted in knots over that. You don't want to have a large list of recipients. Instead, use what's called blind carbon copy, BCC. Do not ever hit reply all. I actually lost the TV station off of my team when I hit reply all and sent a snarky response to an email. I thought it was going to my salesperson. This is why you don't gossip or say things. I thought it was going to my salesperson. It went to the general manager of the TV station and my salesperson. Guess who lost the TV station that day? It was moved to another team. So do not hit reply all. And then don't forget to hit spell check. I got to tell you, Grammarly is the best thing ever. If you don't have a Grammarly license, please go out and get one. Get the free one. It works absolutely amazing. And then never send an email when you're angry. You can write it. Don't put a name in the to. Type out your anger email and then go grab a glass of water or go for a walk. Come back, reread it, because I guarantee you after 10 minutes, you're going to go, I shouldn't say that, or I shouldn't send it, and delete it, and you'll feel better. All right, I had a couple of examples. I'm not going to go through them. In closing, what I'll say is my one more thing: your smile is your logo, your personality is your business card. How you leave others feeling after an experience with you becomes your trademark. And so after meeting with someone, what will they remember about you? Now is the time to work on your personal brand. It's not critical right now. But it is the time to start thinking about those types of things, because how you act in a business, the etiquette that you have, the behaviors that you display, especially early on in your career, will set the table for you to be successful in the long term. And how's that for timing, Ari?
You did great.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Any questions?
Anyone have any final questions or comments? I did put a survey in the chat. It'll take literally 2 to 3 minutes. Just asking if you like Dr. Dozier or not. So definitely take time out to complete that, please. Again, it will take literally 2 or 3 minutes. Thank you, Dr. Dozier, so much for sharing your awesome words of advice.
The answer to Ari's question is yes, you like me. There's my LinkedIn. And again, feel free to, even the adults, connect with me. Your network is absolutely critical.
Yes. Thank you all so much for joining us. Next Thursday, same time, will be the careers in the future. And we do have some awesome guest speakers coming that are also going to tell you about the updates and similar version of LinkedIn. I believe it's called Tallow. So stay tuned. Thank you so much. We'll see you later.